Hey guys, welcome back to another recent viewing video, and I don't know, for whatever reason or another, I decided to do this without my main light on, so that's why it's dark and looks different. But anyway, I want to talk about a movie that I watched last night that I actually enjoyed more than I expected to, and it was a recent comedy movie called Sisters that was starring Tina Fey and Amy Poehler. Let me talk a little bit about those two. I know that they'd worked together before on a movie called Baby Mama, and maybe they've done some other stuff together. Maybe they've done some TV stuff together. I know Tina Fey, was on 30 Rock for years. I know she was involved with SNL. I know Amy Poehler does or did Parks and Rec, I think it was, and I'm sure she had some affiliation with SNL at some point over the years. But I've never really seen anything that they did together, and I've seen very little of any of their, individual projects and movies. And so for a little while I was resistant to even watching this movie, this Sisters. But I ended up having some credit on Vudu, and I decided to rent a couple of things, and that was one of them that I rented. When I finally got around to watching Sisters yesterday, like I said, I had pretty low expectations. In fact, I almost expected it to suck. And for the most part, it did not. It was funny. I did enjoy it. It had some problems, but I'll try to detail a little bit of what I didn't like about it here in a minute. But I'm going to try to condense the synopsis of the movie a little bit. So Tina and Amy play sisters in this movie, and Amy's character was always kind of the stodgy, no fun having, straight-laced, kind of basic sister, whereas Tina's character was the rebellious one, the one who had fun and sowed her wild oats, so to speak. And as they grew up, they continued down those paths. Amy Poehler character was very, like I said, basic was probably a good word for it. Tried to do the best that she could in her life and all that. She was at least married once, because in the movie she's been divorced for like 2 years. And she is sometimes reflective on the fact that maybe she didn't have as much fun and do as many things in her life that she wanted to do. On the flip side, Tina's character, her sister, continues to be irresponsible, continues to overact, act out, I guess maybe is a better way to put it, and doesn't make the best decisions, can't hold down a job, can't hold down a place to live. And she has a daughter. I don't think the movie really mentioned much about her marriage or relationships or anything, but she did end up with a kid who is the one thing in her life that somewhat keeps her grounded to reality. She had a line in the movie that I'm probably only going to be able to paraphrase at best, but it was something along the lines of, she told her daughter that her responsibility to her daughter was the only job in her life that she would never quit on or never walk out on. So that's kind of the two characters in a nutshell. So the movie sort of kicks in gear when Amy's character sits down to take a Skype call from their parents. And the parents say basically, hey, we're thinking about selling the family house, and we'd really like for you and your sister to come and clean up your room, take care of your stuff that was here. It's a mess, and we need you to do this because we're looking to get this house sold, which was a shock to Amy's character, a bit, like big time, because that was, her house where she grew up and where all of her memories were. And it's a shock, I guess, anytime a house that's been in the family for a long, long time ever is potentially going to be put up for sale. And she asked him if, what her sister's reaction was to this. Well, they were like, well, we haven't told her yet. We were hoping that you would do that, because they expected the reaction not to be very positive or happy. So she gets stuck with having to tell her sister this. Well, she doesn't even tell her sister. She tells her sister that the parents want them to come down and take care of their stuff for some other reason. I don't remember off the top of my head. But when they pull into the drive of the house, there's already a sign out front that says, not for sale, but sold. And both sisters are very, very upset. And so they basically scheme and finagle their way into having one last big, I guess they called it Ellis Island party because their character's last name was Ellis. They wanted to have one last big shindig, and they wanted to invite all their old friends from school there and have themselves a we may be over 40 but we're not dead kind of party and live it up and kind of recapture their teen years. And so they decide to have this party in the house while their parents have already moved into some condo. And from there on out, the rest of the movie kind of details mostly the party itself, but some of the other things that come up, and I won't spoil that kind of stuff because if you are interested in the storyline of a comedy like this, then I wouldn't want to spoil that. But it was good. I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty funny. As I mentioned earlier, there were some problems, and I think a lot of comedy movies suffer from this these days, in that they do have a premise, they do have a plot, but they still manage to have these scenes and sequences that just don't make any sense. Sometimes they're stupidly over the top. Sometimes they meander and have no point. It's like all they want to do is have these set pieces of here's a funny joke, here's a funny sight gag, here's a chance for some actor to cut loose for a couple of minutes in this scene, and it may not have anything to do at all with the storyline. And I can understand that, but I seem to remember there being all kinds of movies from the past that I really loved. There's Something About Mary, The Wedding Singer, older movies like Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. Like, these movies had scenes and plots that made sense from scene to scene, regardless of how many laughs they were trying to generate out of any predicament that was displayed on. And movies like Sisters and Trainwreck a little bit before that, and The Other Woman, and some of these other comedies that I've watched since I've been doing these videos that I enjoyed, where it was still like, and I kind of lost my train of thought there for a second. But it was just like, yeah, no, I completely lost my train of thought on where I was going with that. Anyway, there's stuff that just happens that didn't have to be in the movie. Stuff that later on you're just like, why couldn't they have just tried their hardest to write a story with laughs and gags and scenes like that, instead of just sort of, okay, just wing it. Sometimes I wonder if maybe they just tell the actors and actresses in these movies to ad-lib a bunch of shit, and whatever is good enough, we'll leave it in the story, and we'll leave it in the movie, even if it doesn't really complement the story at all. And I think it's a common problem in Hollywood this in this time, especially when it comes to comedies. Maybe an idea is, and I'm not a writer, and I don't know what it's like to write these kind of movies, and what kind of expectations from studios there are, but I think somebody should write a comedy movie, but outline it as a drama. Outline it as something serious. Give a premise and characters and all that, and say, this is what's happening. Because this is a movie that could have been done in a serious way. Two sisters in different points in their life, wanting something more, getting older, watching their parents get older, watching their parents make these decisions that they want to be a part of because it affects them as well, wanting to have this house or a stake in this house. This is a movie that could have been a drama that could have played out between these family members. Instead, it was a comedy. But why not write the basics of the script, an outline of the story, and do it in a serious manner? And then when they go to shoot the movie and they need to write the scene by scene, for filming each scene, then throw in the jokes, or let your leads have their chance to ad lib and come off the cuff and whatnot. But it would just, I think it would build a better movie than the movie that we saw on that I saw on my TV. Like I said, I'm not saying that the movie is bad, but it leaves you with some moments where you're just kind of scratching your head and you're like, there was no big laugh in this scene. There was no big step forward in the story in this scene, but this scene still existed. Why? It didn't make any sense. It didn't tie things together. And some of the points in the movie were kind of rushed, like they're going to their parents' house and they haven't even got there yet. And they drive by this guy's house and he's out working in the yard, and Tina's character says, oh, let's do some flirting with this guy. So they both start flirting and giving one-liners and saying stuff, and he's just kind of standing there looking at him funny. And this ends up being Amy Poehler's character's love interest for the movie, and they just drove up to him for no reason whatsoever and started making comments. Next thing you know, he comes to the party, they're making out, and yada yada yada, and it's like, that didn't make a whole lot of sense. It wasn't like some other character's brother. It wasn't their next door neighbor. It was some guy down the street who just happened to be working out in his yard, so they made a fool of themselves in front of him, and that was how he was introduced into the thing. Seemed kind of weak to me, and it's just those kind of little things that, I guess, like I said, I'm not a writer, I'm not a director, I'm not an actor, but I think if I was writing for this movie, I would have wrote that serious story first and foremost as the foundation, and then I would have said, okay, now you guys go in and make comedy out of this, make it funny, but know that this is what the story is, as opposed to, yeah, you're just sisters and your parents are selling their house, and we wrote a bunch of stupid scenes where everybody can kind of act out and have some fun and cut loose, and if it works, it works, and if not, we may still leave that shit in. I don't know. Anyway, I sound like I'm spending way too much time on the negative. Like I said, I thought the movie was a lot funnier than it had any right to be. I enjoyed it more than I expected to. I think someday when the Blu-ray's like $10, $12, I'll probably pick it up. I would like to own it. I would watch it again and laugh. Oh, and I failed to mention that John Cena, much like in Trainwreck, he shows up in this movie too, and once again, it shouldn't work, but his character and his demeanor and his acting in this was actually pretty funny, and it was kind of a highlight of the movie. Over all these SNL people that I saw who were in it, especially people who were in SNL like 15, 20 years ago, it was funny to see John Cena in the stupid drug dealer role that he had. Plus, drug dealer, WWE, they don't want to make him a heel, but he's in a movie like Trainwreck where his stuff is really sexual. He's in this movie where he's a drug dealer. That's a WWE thing, though. That has nothing to do with these movies. But Sisters, I enjoyed it. Amy Poehler and Tina Fey did have great chemistry. They obviously worked very, very well together. The movie overall was really, really funny. I would recommend it if you like comedies and whatnot. You should at least rent it. Maybe not buy it unless it's cheap. Wait like me until it's kind of cheap. $20 right now for the Blu-ray is too much in my opinion for this movie. But it's not a bad movie at all. And I really enjoyed it. I'm glad that I rented it. So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you next time.